Millions of people over 60 take a calcium supplement every single day, and yet hip fractures keep rising. The problem is not how much calcium they take. The problem is that calcium has been working alone. And to understand why that matters, there's one simple thing most people were never told about bone itself. So why does calcium alone so often fail? The answer is simple. The bone you have right now is not the same bone you had 3 years ago. Not even close. Because bone is not concrete. It's alive. And it is constantly being torn down and rebuilt. Inside the body, 2 teams of cells work around the clock. Scientists call them osteoclasts and osteoblasts, but what matters is what they do. One team tears down old bone tissue. The other builds new bone in its place. This cycle runs across the entire skeleton roughly every 120 days. When those two stay in balance, bone holds its density. When the demolition side starts winning, mass declines. And here's the part most people were never told. Calcium is only one member of that team. Without the right conditions around it, the right support, the right environment, the building crew shows up but cannot do its job properly. A leading journal of menopausal medicine stated it plainly. Calcium supplementation alone is not recommended for fracture prevention in the general postmenopausal population. Not the fringe, the published science. So if calcium alone is not the answer, what is? It turns out the first piece of that answer was sitting in plain sight. And it starts with something most people already walk past in the grocery store without a second thought. The answer is kale. Here is something worth sitting with for a moment. 2 people take the exact same amount of calcium. One absorbs nearly twice as much as the other, same dose. Completely different result. Most people taking calcium supplements right now have no idea this difference exists. So the question is why? The body absorbs approximately 59% of the calcium in kale. From dairy milk, that number sits between 30 and 35%. And the reason comes down to something simple. Kale carries not just calcium, but the compounds that tell the body what to do with it. Vitamin K1 arrives in the same leaf at the same meal, activating the process that directs calcium where it actually needs to go. A randomized controlled study of adults averaging 61 years old found that increasing vitamin K1 through leafy greens significantly improved how calcium entered the bone matrix. Sautéed in a little olive oil, stirred into soup, added to a smoothie. The form matters less than the consistency. This is what calcium looks like when it finally has somewhere to go. But even when all of this is working, something else can still be quietly dismantling the process from the inside. Not by blocking calcium, but by attacking the cells that build bone in the first place. Chronic inflammation does not always announce itself. It runs in the background sometimes for years, with no obvious symptoms. But inside bone tissue, what it does is specific and damaging. It suppresses the cells that build, while pushing the cells that break down into higher and higher activity. No amount of calcium reverses that environment on its own. There is a spice that has been used across South Asian cooking for thousands of years. Not as medicine, simply as food. Researchers studying its active compound, curcumin, found something that caught the bone health world's attention. In bone cell research, curcumin suppresses a molecular trigger called rankle, the signal that tells bone-breaking cells to activate. In a controlled fracture study, animals treated with it showed strong bone-building activity at the fracture site and an absence of active breakdown cells. The environment had shifted. More building, less breakdown. The spice is turmeric, and it has a problem. On its own, most of its active compounds break down before reaching the bloodstream in useful concentrations. For years, this was the ceiling on what turmeric could actually deliver. Then researchers tested something simple: black pepper. A compound called piperine slows the body's breakdown of curcumin long enough for absorption to happen, and research found that combining the two increased curcumin's bioavailability by about 2,000%. A quarter teaspoon of turmeric with a pinch of black pepper in a warm drink, a soup, or any cooked meal. A small amount of fat alongside it improves things further. That is the full combination. It costs almost nothing, and it only works when you do it most days, not once in a while. Even with better absorption and a calmer inflammatory environment, one question remains. Does any of this translate into real-world changes in bone density, not just nicer lab results? Prunes. Researchers at Pennsylvania State University ran a 12-month controlled trial with 235 postmenopausal women. One group was asked to eat something that had no obvious place in a bone health study. Not a supplement, not a leafy green, something so ordinary it almost seemed like a mistake. 5 to 6 prunes, every single day. At the end of the year, hip bone mineral density had declined by 1.1% in the women who ate none. In the women eating them daily, there was no measurable decline. Hip fracture risk rose in the control group. In the prune group, it did not move. Then the researchers came back 5 years later. The women who had consumed prunes during the original trial still retained significantly better bone density than those who had not. 5 or 6 prunes a day isn't a miracle trick. It was just a boring little habit that quietly stopped bone loss in that study. Prunes work through multiple mechanisms at once. Their polyphenols suppress bone-breaking cell activity while supporting the building side. They carry boron, magnesium, potassium, and vitamin K. Emerging research links them to improvements in gut microbiome diversity, and those improvements reduce the same inflammatory markers that drive bone breakdown in the first place. 5 to 6 prunes every day. That is the amount the clinical evidence supports. So what is a practical foundation? None of these changes require a complete overhaul of how someone eats. 1 bone green worked into a daily meal. Turmeric and black pepper added to something already being cooked. A few prunes each day. These 3 together form the base layer. Not a top 3 foods for strong bones, but a foundation that makes calcium worth taking in the first place. One important note, if you have been diagnosed with osteoporosis, are on bone medications, or have kidney concerns, speak with your doctor before making significant dietary changes. These foods work best alongside proper medical guidance, not instead of it. Calcium still matters, but calcium placed inside the right environment with the right support system around it and inflammation held in check works in a way that calcium taken alone never will. These 3 foods are the foundation that makes calcium useful. And in the next episode, we go further into the plants that push the entire bone-building system into a higher gear. Not because they contain more calcium, but because they change the environment in which calcium works entirely.